It. All right, this is the last talk. We're leaving the Associate Director for the CTSA, Mark Einstein, to lead the charge. We've combined Rick, Tick, and PCI because, you know, Bob, I don't know what each of those do specifically, so we bundled them. And I want to thank Bob for hanging out with us for the entire day. I mean, I really value this, and I value a program director's skilled eye at looking at what we're doing. So Mark, take it away, take us home. I'm going to see if you're going to be able to do this. This looks like a Mac. You're on mute.
Can you see me?
Yeah, we can see you, and it works.
Yes, I wasn't as good as Marilla, but I came close. And yes, this is a Mac. And this is not in any way, shape, or form, last but not least, and it's certainly not as attractive as the stuff that was just presented beforehand, but it is a necessary part of the Clinical Translational Science Award. And just a word of a note that these are the leaders. We all come from various different backgrounds with regards to this core, and we've been forced into a wonderful marriage together. And I think we have a lot of synergistic, complementary skill sets that have helped us to really piece this together. These really unattractive parts of conducting good clinical research. And we have Nancy, who does a great job in herding the goats, and somehow synergistically they nominated me to be the one to give the talk, but in no way am I doing the leading or anything of any of this. I'm just here to talk, and as I'm hearing some of the stuff, I actually tweaked some of the slides so we could actually get into a little bit of discussion if we have a little bit of time, some of the stuff that we've talked about, because as you can imagine, these cores are essential to almost everything that most have done, and you're going to hear some mention of this and where this goes, but I'd rather talk about some of our problems. I keep having in my ear what Dr. Taylor said earlier, and I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, but we have like kind of a free ticket right now, but when we go in for our resubmission, everyone like just thinks that everything is going to be like perfect and we're going to be able to do things. And I know I totally said that wrong, Dr. Taylor. You said that much better. But my point, like, we got to be ready to get things working very well amongst what is really a statewide CTSA. And hold on a second. A couple of things, and I want to remind everyone. I mean, I don't want anyone to look at this, but the workflow for getting a clinical trial up and running through our complex systems of compliance and regulatory and budgetary and finance, where you have like a lot of square pegs and round holes, has made it incredibly hard to really maintain timelines. And I applaud the group and leaders for how we've really kind of ripped off the Band-Aid to reassess, how do we do business here? How do we make the business of performing, getting studies up and running, something that can be done efficiently and from a feasibility standpoint is doable. So improving that efficiency of the startup processes, we've been working very hard on a lot of this. And I do want to, everyone has been talking about how we've done on COVID trials, and, it was all hands on deck, including all that regulatory data management and everything. And we've been obviously part of the mix with the labor and the workforce with getting everything running and operationalize this within healthcare systems that were incredibly struggling with overburdened amount of patients, with workflow issues, with poor facilities and other things, and yet we were able to perform high quality COVID research in a challenging time, and we continue to do so. As Marilla said, and her staff and our staff, they're always here. And they have been always here, and they're always like stepping up, and it's humbling to work with this staff that we've worked with that is constantly dealing with COVID and constantly dealing with being able to effectively do the other clinical trials and being able to work on all those workflows. And I know all the clinicians that have been part of this have, our lives have changed in so many different ways, but also assuring that we have appropriate compliance and the applicable regulations, including the clinical research billing that I want to just talk a little bit about briefly later, but and then standardizing some of the policies. And this is one of those things that I think we're just starting to get caught up with, but with the fits and starts of COVID, I think this is one of those things that we really need to be focusing on. So we have the enduring approaches of getting through what is a incredibly complex system much quicker and much more efficiently. The scope really is the idea is to help those investigators, and we really want to focus on the clinical investigators and clinical departments that have historically not been that involved. Okay, there are some wonderful silos of highly efficient, highly expert clinicians and clinician scientists that are working together that have shown us the way within the system. And we really want to engage more of the other folks. So I'm going to talk a little about some of that engagement through some of our network trials that we've been really starting to hammer out. And then really, trying to, apply all of these things. And we do have a roadmap within it. Ned and myself, that Kathy, we're all part of CINJ, and it really has been a good roadmap within our DHS to figure out how we do things. I know, Ray, you talked about this, but these are all technologies that are housed under our new clinical trials office, and all these things are being integrated. So the foundations for the road are being set. Now we got to pave these roads and connect these silos and efficiently be able to do this clinical research. And we don't have a lot of time to do that. And I do want to have a little conversation about that. So how do we improve these? Well, centralizing this, putting it all under one roof, thanks to Ray and Brian Strom's leadership and all the hard work of Nancy Riley and Judy and Bill Jester and everyone that has been actively involved, really centralizing this. And then we have a whole host of new folks that have been hired, focusing on budgeting, Medicare coverage analysis, which is a requirement for this, and then our partner hospital application process. And with respect to our partner hospitals, it's very new for some of them, and really teaching them how to effectively work and integrate with clinical research, which is critically important. And then Encore is really the central source of truth, which is actually going to help also with that communication. One of the 3 C's that we need to effectively run a highly reliable organization. I don't want to get too much into the studies. You've heard this stuff ad nauseum, but this stuff, there has been so much inter-NJ Acts activity with this core and others. Regulatory, obviously, we can't do clinical trials with all that interaction we have. And I think the formation of the Scientific Review Board is a real win as a deliverable under the rubric of clinical trials. And all the data management of COVID studies. I applaud Dr. Roy and his colleagues for everything that they've done with Bird and helping to move things forward. I think things are going to get a little bit more complicated as we're operationally going to be continuing to run medically necessary, time-sensitive type of things, including the clinical research and COVID. Before, it was a little easier when it was all hands on deck with COVID, and I think it's going to get a little challenging as we juggle the two. The workforce development, I do think, and I want to talk a little bit about this, and I'm putting this as a pin. I know our workforce development folks also have been pinning things that we need to work closer together with. We have clinical research fellows. We have more bandwidth to be able to include this and have more efficiency with this. And I believe that we could actually really, really use this core more for workforce development. We certainly have been using it for training. There's been a lot of interactiveness with our KL2 scholars, and I think there is a great learning curve achievement with them by working with our core activities. Other things, and this is really what I have found to be very attractive in my prior role where I used to come from and coming over here, having that ability to participate in that network activity. We are, things kind of got put on hold as a result of the COVID hiatus, I like to call it, from a clinical trial standpoint, but we are already moving head on with starting a number of CTSA network type of trials. We're considering a couple of more trials, and these are, I think, and this is another thing that I think is something that we got to be working on to figure out how to efficiently identify the investigators and figure out how to move forward with some of these trials, because the expertise absolutely exists for almost everything within the RBHS network. I'm very proud of, and I know Ray had spoken about this before in terms of the supplements. We are one of the CTSA hubs that have responded to 2 of the innovative clinical trial awards. They actually, both of them went in on this past Monday, and I know that my last few weekends, and I know Ray's last few weekends, and Marty's we've all been spending writing these sort of things. And I think that this goes to the unique expertise of RBHS, especially being a statewide CTSA and having access through the spectrum of life, as Ray had pointed out, that we could do these very innovative type of trials. And in addition to Ray's trial, we have the Well Mama trial, which is actually using behavioral health evidence-based interventions to improve maternal mortality. And many of you may not know, but New Jersey's in the lowest quartile in the United States for maternal mortality. And we're teaming up with 2 other CTSAs that are also in areas in states that are in the lowest quartile of maternal mortality to try to figure out how we can engage with the clinical sites to give them the tools that they need to form the interventions to improve the chances of a mother pregnant dying. Okay, and you've heard our superstar Dr. Brown is very much involved in this, and it's just a thrill and an honor to actually see our KL2 scholars already getting into what are essentially RO1 equivalent roads through directly through the CTSA channel. So we're thrilled to have Dr. Brown, who has been incredibly active with the development of this proposal, and our fingers are crossed. And none of this could happen without, obviously, all the key personnel. And this is just a small cohort of folks. I do want to point out all our new personnel that have joined us. Elise Lewis is just phenomenal to help us with our contracts manager. Even though my mom's a judge, I definitely need help with like the legal aspects of all this stuff. And Jonathan, Justin, and Alexandra, again, they're going to be really forming the core. Now it's just a matter of paving some of these ways. So as I'm listening to some of this stuff, and I'd really appreciate to hear Dr. Taylor has some words of wisdom from a couple of cycles ago when he wrote in there. But, we are trying to expand on the network trials. Since we have that feather in the cap of going after these trials and trying to have more efficient identification of appropriate investigators. And what we have, we've created within our leadership a group of folks, and once we get an idea of what these trials are, we kind of send it out, and it's more like, okay, who knows who? And we really need a better repository about how to do this. And I'd like to hear others and maybe comment on it if we had some time, but something that we definitely have to work on during this grant cycle to improve this. Undoing some of the clinical trial siloed work, and I think having everything under one roof, with Ray's vision and the vision of RBHS in general, is to help us with the negotiation, to help us with the contracting, to take it sort of out of the traditional Rutgers flow that deals with all this other contracting that has nothing to do with clinical trials. Because when it comes to clinical trials, time is money. And we've got to get that working quickly for the sustainability of this core and the sustainability of us being able to do clinical research effectively and sustainably from a financial standpoint. But we do have to have some serious work on feasibility. We've changed the workflow of things, including the SRB, to assess the feasibility, but now the real work starts. Now the real work of actually figuring out how to do this. And I think now's the time that we really need to work with Cindy and her group we got to get some time measures for implementing and figuring out whether or not the feasibility that we're assessing is actually working. So we got to work on some metrics for that. And then also expanding community engagement. Luckily, many of the clinicians across the system, and again, it's quite humbling to see this, but they are already very engaged with community. But really, we need to do, I think, ultimately a better job in not having that ivory tower approach. And this is Mark Einstein's opinion. You guys could have a totally different opinion, but we got to do a better job with a better approach for some of that community engagement, particularly with some of the different siloed research opportunities. I'm going to stop there so we can have some comments, so we can have some feedback, and maybe some more food for thought.
Great job, Mark. You brought us right back on time and on budget. Well, maybe not, at least on time. I think one of the greatest challenges for us when we inherited the clinical research franchise was the siloed nature of the work. We were not pulling the cart in the same direction. The health system wanted to go in one direction, investigators wanted to go in another, and administration didn't even want wheels on the cart. So, you know, we now have, we have a logo, right? And you know our logo, Mark. First visit, first patient. We align everything that matters to first patient, first visit. And we actually have the lift now because we have contracting in our shop. We're going to have an SRB that's in our shop, and we have execution of the studies in our shop. So we should strive for first visit, first patient. And that's, you know, the industry metric for private practice studies is 6 to 8 weeks. Now, I was shocked when Bob said he could stand up a study in 72 hours. That blew my doors away. I don't know what he's smoking in Georgia. Well, yeah, I do. It's tobacco. But I'm a lung doctor. Come on. You know I'm going to go there. But that's amazing. And, you know, that's a wish and a dream. The reality is, if I can do this in 6 weeks, I could compete with privates in this space. And, you know, we also were siloed with our clinical research units. Our CRUs were working in separate entities. What COVID did was bring us all together. I mean, when we have our calls now across across the universe, it's we, the real we, where we're working together with Yoshi, we're working together with Newark, we're working together with New Brunswick, which is impressive. But let me stop talking here. And Bob, you know, this is really the centerpiece, right, of any CTSA, is how do we get participants in studies? How do we retain them? How do we do what we think is so important? Bob, any comments?
Yeah, I have a couple, and just responding to a couple of the questions about, you know, first of all, you know, the TIN and network trials, it's new to all of us. And I think we're all doing that. Yeah, I think I know somebody that does lungs, or yeah, I know somebody that does kidneys, you know, and I wish we were more sophisticated than that, but, and we're trying to, you know, we're trying to develop lists and work through some of our resource materials, but that's a challenge. I will say that, you know, the efficiency and the siloedness of the approval process, I would have to say it's been a 10-year journey for us to work on that, of aligning that between healthcare or the university, because, you know, our IRB sits in the university, and the clinical shop sits in the healthcare, and then we have 3 different partners doing trials. I mean, a lot of it for us was parallel versus sequential processing. You know, a lot of stuff was waiting for one shoe to drop before you did something else, and to get rid of that. And then when we, you know, sort of got into it, and, you know, ultimately it was a champion, Robin Ginn, who runs our Office of Clinical Trials. I mean, just a strong analytic mind, and really, you know, just plotted out where every 10 minutes or day was lost. And, you know, unfortunately, there wasn't one roadblock. There were 1,000 different roadblocks, and that was the problem. And one of the biggest roadblocks that was surprising to many people was the investigator turnaround time when there was a query went back. And so we started plotting that. I mean, overall, we're in about that 40-day sort of range. So I think on average, something like that. You know, that rapid approval is only for disasters or super important things. And we've done it for a couple of device trials, but mostly, and it was built because of Ebola, of our tough experience with Ebola. As you know, we had Ebola patients at Emory, and we were trying to get sort of, you know, unique use trials through, and we realized we had to do something. And we literally got the first test run done on it in like January, just before COVID hit. And so we were ready to go with that. But that is a big lift for those. And I guess the other thing is, you know, we did a lot of work looking at our outliers. You know, you get an average day of 70, and then you find out, well, you got a lot of 40s and 50s, and then there's somebody out there at 190 days because, you know, there's a contract negotiation issue and stuff. And so we got a lot of effort there. But Yeah, I mean, it's hard work, and it's not very exciting at times, isn't it? It's just sort of brutal digging through it, and and the investigator was a big problem for us, trying to get people to be responsive.
We have absolutely have seen that, Bob. I've had investigators complain to me that the IRB is not being responsive, only to find out that their application was sitting on their desk.
Absolutely.
They didn't submit a revised application to the IRB, and they're yelling at the IRB. And not only that, they start yelling to my boss, to the chancellor, that the IRB is broken. I can't get my IRB back. And they never revised their application. How embarrassing is that? But the point is that's exactly that kind of onesie twosies that you have to figure out the problem and then have it as automated alerts that, hey, you're not going to get approved if you don't resubmit. Seems obvious. Any other words of wisdom, Bob?
Well, I wrote down a few comments. Obviously you hooked. I wrote you a private chat message and said you hooked me. Because I canceled my budget meeting. I was supposed to leave at 1 because I have taken 2 pages of notes of ideas I will steal from you as I've got a chance to look under the hood of your CTSA, and I think the less I've looked at, I've been on some external advisory committees and stuff, and I was told once, if you've seen one CTSA, you've seen one CTSA, because they all are very, very different. And you guys are super impressive that you've been up and running and doing so well, and in just a couple of years with the pandemic on top of it. That's incredible. But and you have some really innovative stuff. I loved the ISP innovation, like I talked about, and informatics, putting that big educational component into informatics. That's pretty different from a lot of other CTSAs. I think that's a really good idea. And then what's really interesting is some of the things you have in workforce development, we have in our CMDTS, and our workforce development is really about coordinators, not about investigators, but about a coordinator. So it's a really different thing. But I think my take-home message is I'm really glad we're not in the same funding cycle. It gives me great reassurance that and you guys are doing incredible, and your enthusiasm is fantastic. It's palpable, and I think that's really great to see. And like I said, I've got a page of notes where I already sent an email to our environmental folks that are doing the exposome and said, how about a blue sky? And I have a few other ideas I've stolen from you, which I will not give you any credit for. And,
I'll tell you, your honorarium's going down astronomically.
but thanks for letting me participate today. I really enjoyed it, and it's really exciting to see how well you're doing and to really learn from you and all your great ideas. Thank you.
No, it's my pleasure, Bob. In all honesty, as you roll out the environmental program, please involve some of our investigators, Howard Kippen specifically, Zabel. Helmut Zabel here is the head of our Institute for Occupation and Environmental Health. I think this really offers an opportunity to work together on combined grants. We would love to work with another hub. We are open to everything. So what I'd like to do at this point is, I don't know how big a thank you I could actually say over the internet, but I was absolutely bowled over by the success of each and every corps. We have monthly calls, Bob, and I keep them to 30 minutes, and I'm draconian. I give them the 28-minute warning, and they better get it in. And we, for my team who takes all the notes, that's 14 calls a month to engage every corps member. And I think it's valuable that they understand, A, we're completely committed in the philosophy of clinical and translational science, and B, you're important and we want to hear what you're doing. And I'm really proud of the 35 people that I have on my slide, and the other 325 that are part of the CTSA. So I want to thank each and every one of you. Bob, it was wonderful. This is the first time we actually met, except for one other phone call, but I feel like we're friends. And at the end of the day, everyone be safe and have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much. So long.
Thank you, Ray.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Good job.